Okay. I'll call to order the March 14th, 2019 meeting of the Moab Planning Commission at 6 p.m. First item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. This is for items not on the agenda. If you would like to speak, please fill out a public comment sheet that can be found in the hall. Is there anybody here for citizens to be heard? Okay, moving on. Approval of minutes. We have the minutes for February 14th, 2019.
I noticed on the minutes there weren't outcomes for the last 3 agenda items. It looks like we just need to go back and write the outcomes of those 3.
It was lacking the outcomes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, lacking outcomes. So, planning resolution 3/2019, 4/2019, and 5/2019 are lacking outcomes for February the 14th. So I'd like to postpone approval until the next meeting.
Well, for what it's worth, is that not documented in the discussion part up above? I can't tell.
The discussion is discussing action item number
2.
2.
Right.
Yeah. And there's really no minutes then for
4, 5, and 6.
For 4, 5, and 6. Yeah.
Items.
So is that a motion to table?
Yeah, I move that we postpone it until the minutes are present and the outcomes.
So do I have a second on the table?
I'll second it on tabling the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Table the minutes. Okay, item number 5 and item number 6 have been withdrawn from the agenda. Do I need to say anything more about that? The applicant has withdrawn the petition or the application to rezone.
Right. It may come back, it may morph, but either way it would require new noticing to the to peripheral property owners. Okay.
And so we are on to action item number 7, the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2019-10, an ordinance amending the zoning for property located at 778 West Cane Creek Boulevard in the RA1 residential agricultural zone to C1 commercial residential zone and amending the City of Moab official zoning map. I open the public hearing at 6:03. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the proposed ordinance? We're talking about the Cane Creek rezone. If you're interested in speaking about the Cane Creek rezone.
Oh, I thought it was not going to happen until 6 o'clock. My name's Keith Herman.
Okay, so yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
if you wouldn't mind, would you please go grab a paper in the hall and just write your name on it?
this is the applicant, so we can hear from the applicant later, right?
Whenever you want.
Okay.
At this point.
So how about if we close the public hearing and then we can hear from you when we're talking about the actual rezone?
Oh, I didn't know whether I put my poster up in the window, and then it said that we're going to have a meeting at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And I didn't know whether I should attend or not attend.
Yeah, so just hang on a minute, and I think that I will close the public hearing at 6:04, and then we'll bring you up in just a minute to speak on it. Okay. So action item number 8, Planning Resolution 08-2019, a resolution recommending approval of the zoning map amendment for property owned by Keith Herman from RA1 to C1 and amending the City of Moab official zoning map. Staff summary? Does anybody have a staff summary for us?
Summaries or anything on this?
It's we have the agenda cover summary sheet. Do you wish for me to just give you a quick overview of it?
Sure,
or?
that'd be great.
Yeah, well, I only have a question about this.
Could you give an overview?
Go ahead,
first?
go and do your overview.
Yeah, just very quickly. The applicant has historically used this property as a bed and breakfast. I believe that it's been a legal non-conforming use for many years, and they, I believe, the applicant can speak for himself, but my understanding is attempting to sell the property and wants to get the zoning in conformance before that happens. in order to be able to sell it and have the bed and breakfast be able to be a legal use moving forward, because there was a gap in time from when it was a legal non-conforming use till now that, the way the code and the rules work, if there's a long enough gap, then that legal non-conforming use lapses. And so that has lapsed. So in order to bring it up into be legal, this zoning request was made, the zoning change request was made by the applicant.
So just let me be clear, anytime a property is, no, never mind. That was a conditional use question I had. So in order for this property to be a bed and breakfast after it is sold, it needs to be a C1.
Correct. At least. So.
Because there was a lapse in time of when it was being used for the non-conforming use.
Right,
It was a
correct.
legal non-conforming use. When that use desists, if the time period passes, basically that vested non-conforming right goes away.
Correct.
Which is 1 year, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Out. Are we speaking now?
Mr. Herman, would you like to come up and speak with us about this? And just state your name for us.
I'm Keith Herman. I apologize for not recognizing anybody. I was here 20 years ago in the other building asking permission to build a bed and breakfast. And my late wife and I had this dream, and we had come down in Moab many times. We liked the golf course. We liked the hike and bike. We found wonderful people down here. And she had inherited some money, and we thought we'd just buy some property and have a retirement home. And she got to talking to the lady next to us. At that time was Terry and Wally Gerard, and they had the Blue Heron Bed and Breakfast. And that was a spark in our head that maybe we ought to do that. So we quit the best jobs we had, and we moved down here on the property, and we started building it. And when I say we, she and I built the entire property by ourselves. We had the concrete slab poured. The cabinets were built by another company in-house, and a group of guys put the color code on it. But those three things we didn't do, so that structure was our dream come true. And we got the bed and breakfast license, and at that time, the bed and breakfast license was a cottage business out of a residence. So like if I was having a quilting business or a pottery business, it was considered a cottage business out of a residence. Oh, I'm sorry. And now the rules have changed, okay? But, well, actually what happened was we ran the place for the first few months after we opened, and then the following year we had a complete year, and we made plans for New Year's, and she passed away the day before, and my life kind of come to an end. And so it was a struggle for a couple of years, and actually it went on for 4 years before I got smart enough to hire some people to help me, but I didn't want anybody in the house. It was just the whole thing. But I managed to hold on and to make it work, and the world come to see me, and they found themselves loving the Adobe Abode. I had a German group come back for 8 years in a row, so I must have been getting something right. And then at one point I saw my taxes go up about $1,800 one year, and I asked why the big change. Well, you're in a commercial business. But they didn't change me to commercial. I was still a cottage business and under bed and breakfast rules and regulations. Long and short of that is, I was in the bed and breakfast business a long time. Usually you can only put up with tourists for about 7 to 10 years, and you've answered every, I don't want to use hard, but stupid questions. I'll relate one to you really quickly. My stupidest question was a lady one morning, I had 2 plates full of food, and she stopped me in the aisleway and asked me how many arches hadn't they found. And she was serious. And you know, the first reaction you have is just drop the plates, and I didn't know what to do, and I said, most of them.
Good answer.
And she turned around and perfectly happy.
Oh, yeah.
And I went over and put the 2 plates down, and these people that were from Japan who didn't speak really good English, and they asked me, "You haven't found them all?" And I had 14 people for breakfast that morning. It was this crescendo of,
Oh
and I apologize, but that I'm a little nervous. But anyway, the point being is that I maintained the bed and breakfast and was quite successful at it. And I had employees for 5 and 6 year runs with me, and some of them are now working for the city. And it was a deal that I tried to make the dream work when it was a tragedy for me. And after 17 years and all the things that were going on, I had a couple of health issues here recently, and we were kind of winding down thinking, what are we going to do? And when I decided to shut the business down, I forfeited my license. And then I reworked my finances because it's really difficult to get out of business. It's a lot easier to get into business than it is to get out. But I had to redo all that, and in doing so, that forfeiture didn't allow me to take and grandfather for someone to come in. So everybody who has, I've had several, I count 5 of them that have wanted to come down, but they recognize it as being a bed and breakfast. And that's what their ambition is. That's what it was built for. That's what it was for a long time. And I relate a story that when we first come down here, we started building the bed and breakfast, and we'd hiked up on the rim, and it's this huge slab of concrete. It was monstrous size. It's 4,600 square feet. And people thought it was going to be the kids' skate park. This structure is one of the first structures ever built in Moab out of steel. The whole framework is steel. Well, that was galvanized, so then when they saw that up, they thought it was going to be the women's prison. And we told people, it's a bed and breakfast. Okay? We got it sheathed and the OSB board on it, and they thought it was going to be the equestrian park. Every time we'd go have something for lunch or run into somebody at the grocery store, they had another story. And so the issue was we kept trying to tell them, we're building a bed and breakfast. And the long and short of it is that that's what it was. That's what it was built to be. And for me to take and go to the next chapter in my life, I need to have a rule change because I was under Cotty's rules and now it's zoning rules, and a C1 would make it possible for someone to come in and do a bed and breakfast. And that's my reasoning. Thank you for your time.
Awesome, thank you. I understand that was a pretty cool place for a bunch of local weddings, and ex-mayor Dave actually officiated a lot of them.
I apologize.
It sounded like a wonderful place for local weddings.
Well, my return guest rate was huge, and people who have come there, I've sponsored the Arts Festival, the Celtic Festival, and that type of thing, so they love coming to the place. It's a great place for weddings. I've had several there. And I had the Arts Festival, or the Music Festival, for about 9 years, and I've had bagpipes in the house, which are really loud. So they went out on the back patio. People from Bartlett were coming over wanting to know why I didn't turn the music down. And, Paul Waddell and Christian Layer were back there just doing crazy stuff. One time, Paul Waddell was practicing in the house, and I would yell at him, "Hey, how about some bluegrass?" And he would just go to bluegrass right out of Mozart. And then I'd go Elton John, and he'd do that. The phone rang, and he came over and said, "Hold this." And he handed me his Stradivarius. My feet wouldn't move. And he's on the phone for several minutes, and he looked at me, "What's the matter with you?" And I'm going, "Didn't you tell me this is a Stradivarius?" He says, "Yes." He says, "It's insured for $2 million. So those are some of the wonderful things that happen at the bed. So yeah, it's what it was. It's what my wife's dream was. Yeah, she was only 46 when she passed.
Okay.
Let's not dwell on that. I'm going to dwell on my new future.
Good.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commission, do we have any discussion about this zone change? I
Yeah.
have not looked at the zone map, the city zone map. And
I mean,
we keep-
C1 is our,
I can
there's,
tell you
there's very little
that on
of it
the east
now.
of me is a rental property. Across the street is Moab Adventure Industrial. There's a man named Mick who lives in Seattle most of the year. He's an Englishman. He has a motorcycle shop on the other section where the big Mercury Tower's at. Nature Conservancy's in my backyard, and then that whole meadow behind me is never gonna be developed, because that's all Nature Conservancy. And so I don't really, I have all my own parking, I have overflow parking. It was well planned, and it's an acre and a tenth. So
I think on his side of the street, isn't it all RA1, and then the other side's like an industrial?
I'll pull up a map.
Yeah, it's RA1 until it gets to I,
Yeah.
and then it's R3 and R2.
Right.
So this is just for this one piece of property. This is not a code change for people that are RA1.
Correct, this only would apply to this one parcel.
Yeah. So looking at the relevant code provisions, things that would be allowed now if it were to be a C1, you have things like bed and breakfast. Multifamily housing would also be allowed when it wouldn't otherwise be in the RA zone that it's in now. Let's see what else. I'm just doing a little summary.
Veterinary clinics.
Those are allowed in RA1. Financial institutions, group homes were already allowed. Hospitals would be allowed now. Otherwise, there's a lot of similarity between RA and C1. There are no overnight accommodations except for licensed bed and breakfasts that would be allowed. And then you would have the addition of allowing multifamily housing rather than just single family with an ADU, which is how it is now in RA1, which I see as a benefit. Looking at, future, obviously, if we're looking at a zone change, it's not just the proposed use of the proposed buyer. We want to, anything that could feasibly happen there, we want to think about. And then retail establishments too, which otherwise there wouldn't be now. Those are the big changes between RA and C1. But we do talk about C1 a lot as being a zone that we would like more around town. There's that tiny little portion of it that exists now, but I mean, if we're talking about future of Moab, we want more multifamily housing, small retail, mixed use, and C1 really provides the opportunity for a lot of that.
I agree. I think it's a good area to even eventually the whole strip be C1, because the parcels are larger, more parking.
yeah.
Yeah, I think he's shown that it'll continue on as a bed and breakfast. The lifespan of a house is about 300 years. One made out of concrete and steel is probably much longer than that. And I think it's in a great location for a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, I agree.
And do we have any issues with zoning a spot?
Any what?
No, people hate to call it spot zoning, but.
That's my thing. And then I also don't think, I don't want to set that precedent.
Well,
For me, I just don't.
for what it's worth, when you look at the map, we see that. It's not in a perfect world an ideal approach, of course, but I don't think from a legal standpoint it's
Can I do it?
indefensible, yeah.
Okay. Joe, could you close the door or hush those folks?
Gotta keep the door open.
Oh, no, probably not.
Well,
Thank you.
Which resolution is this?
Forgot.
What's the resolution? I'll move that we approve it.
Yeah.
So any other discussion?
I did. Like 15 windows open.
Okay, can I call for a motion?
Or 8.
I move that we approve Resolution 8, 2019, recommending the approval of a zoning map amendment for property owned by Keith Harmon from RA1 residential agricultural zoning to C1 commercial residential zoning, and amending the City of Moab official zoning map.
Do I have a second?
I second Marian's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So one opposed. Okay, motion pass. Thank
So
you.
we have favorably recommended it to City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
probably going to be the next chapter in my life, but you've saved this man, you know.
Good luck.
I was more scared here than I was in Vietnam.
Oh. That's so sad.
Okay, future agenda items. Nobody knows.
What do you want to do? Oh, is this to me? Well, there's certainly a bunch of applications that are still in process
Okay,
that are probably coming your way. I can't list them off the top of my head necessarily, and wouldn't want to promise what's on the next agenda per se, but I would hope that we will bake up the lighting item for the next
hearing.
well, so I'm trying to think. If we have enough time to advertise it for the next meeting, then we will, but otherwise it would be the following meeting.
Right.
We should do that so Kaylin doesn't get mad at us.
Don't want that.
One thing that I would like to include on the agenda, at least for the next couple of months, is an update from the Land Use Committee for whoever's
Advisory.
in
Oh, for the future land use map?
yeah, whether that comes from staff or from the folks who are in those meetings. I'd like to see that on our agenda.
Great. Really, the hope is that the planning commissioners take that on for both planning commissions in terms of just updating and being the communication vector, but
Right.
obviously can support that as staff.
Okay, and I think that we can put that on the agenda, and you guys can give us updates to if and when you're able to sit in those meetings.
Definitely.
Great.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for the future agenda items? Okay, so we've got the big two off our desk. We've got the downtown plan and the lighting. As soon as we get that public hearing done, those will be done. So congratulations to us for getting those out of the way. All right, if there's anything else that needs to be discussed for the good of the commission, I will adjourn the meeting. Okay, meeting's adjourned at 6:22. Rachel, see how painless that was?
We're so painless.